I wanted to do something a little bit different today where I'm going to be reacting to another manifestation coach's video where she announced that the specific person, SP, that she had manifested back into her life and married are now getting a divorce. And I just want to preface this whole video by saying I'm not shitting on anybody. I'm not saying she's a bad coach, right? As I said in either the video that I posted most recently or after this, because I don't know what order I'll post these videos in. Coaches also utilize coaches. And the reason for that is, even though I haven't utilized one in a long time, that's not to say I never will. But the reason for that is when it is something that you really want, that you have an emotional attachment to, it can be difficult to see where you're getting in your own way because your emotions kind of cloud your perspective on things, right? So I thought that I would watch her video announcing these things because when I did watch it, there were things that came up where I was like, okay, there might be ways in which that I could help. I don't like I think she's very at peace with her decision. It's totally fine. It's not a failed manifestation. Everything is always your choice. But there were things that she said where I could see how she got to the point where she did, right? So today I will be reacting to, or secondhand coaching, if you will, a video by Manifest with Mary. And this came up on my suggested feed, and I was like, what? Not clickbait? What the fuck? So, yeah, I had to watch it. But before we get into this video, hey legends, I'm Cerise. I'm your self agency and manifestation mentor, and I help you decipher the nuances of manifestation from both the law of assumption and the law of attraction because there's a lot of information out there that's either overcomplicated or oversimplified. And I've learned a lot of things the hard way, so you don't have to. And still learning, by the way. I think that's important. Being in Bali, there's a lot of people who are pedestalizing people. Like, there's a lot of talk of gurus and things like that. And there's a lady here who's like in her late 40s who's very, very spiritual. For those who have followed me for a long time, you know that I don't consider myself very woo woo or hippie anymore. And a lot of the people here are a lot more spiritual than me, definitely more in line with like where I kind of used to be. Not to say that either is wrong or right. This is just what feels best to me and what I've seen improve my life most. And so, therefore, that is the perspective from which I teach. But, there's some younger girls here who are in their like early to mid 20s who look to her and kind of like say that, oh, she's fully aligned and fully channeled and all these things. What does fully channeled even mean? I don't know. But I was really happy to hear the lady who's like older than all of us when they said to her, like, oh, but I thought you were fully channeled and aligned. Again, what does fully channeled mean? I don't know. But for her to say, like, I'm in a very good place. I'm able to recognize a lot of things that come up for me or things that are getting in the way of the things I want to experience and to be able to zoom out, not in these words, but she was basically saying that I still have things come up for me. Like I'm not perfect. I never will be. That's part of the human experience. And then you kind of like hear a lot, right? It's about the journey, not the destination. And she said kind of all of those things in her own words. And I was like, I could hear that from where I was sitting. And I was like, I'm glad she said that. I'm glad that she you know, doesn't like, even though we are the operant power in our own reality, I'm glad that she doesn't go around sort of thinking like, yeah, I've done it all. There's no work ever left to do because there's always work, although thinking of it as work is not. I don't like using that word. Things do become more easy and natural, so it doesn't feel like work. But it's just, the work is just being able to sort of zoom out in those times when things come up or when something feels quite big. When you start to feel like a certain amount of money is a lot or a certain relationship is a lot or whatever it might be, right? Having the tools to deal with those things, to be able to release the limiting beliefs, really just release. You get to a point where you're able to start releasing things instead of feeling like you need to work on them. And that is a really good place to be. That's not to say that, there aren't things that could come up that completely throw you as well. Also, there was a guy here who asked me if I was a guru, and I was or if I thought I was a guru, and I was like, fuck no. Because, I remember hearing a scientist say that the more he knows and understands, the more he realizes he knows fucking nothing in the grand scheme of things. And I think that's kind of what the being here is about in a lot of ways. Like, realizing that. You don't need to know it all, and that's not the goal. Anyway, I felt like that was all necessary to say because it's not to say that I think I'm a better coach than Mary. I'm sure she's helped a lot of people. There were a lot of things that came up that I felt like would be helpful for me to talk about in a video that could help others. And yeah, let's go. Actually, I might use my headphones for this. Also, I think I've kind of hacked the unfiltered water situation with the hair. So my hair is actually much better. Someone commented on a video. A lot of you are not going to know what the fuck I'm talking about. One of you commented recently about how my hair didn't look fuzzy, and I was like, oh, it's fuzzy. I just don't have a high enough definition camera to pick up on the frizz. But um, figured it out. My hair's looking a lot nicer, I will say. Anyway, back to the video.
I'm not going to share the nitty gritty details. Sorry, y'all. If you want a little chisme, a little hot tea, you're not going to get it from here.
Yeah, so the first thing I want to say is like it is very raw of her to come on and put this out there. And she hasn't posted a video since doing this, which was like a month or a little bit more ago. And I did see in the comments a lot of people sort of saying certain things as well. A lot of it was just trying to encourage her to, keep her existing SP, manifest her existing SP in and everything. But I just want to say I really admire the gumption that it takes to put something like this out there when you have a YouTube channel around manifesting, but especially very heavily in terms of manifesting specific people romantically.
But what I will say is that I said before that my husband was in the military and he was gone a lot. And last year, so let's talk about manifestation for just a moment. Last year, that actually started getting hard for me. I had some losses in 2023, and that grief kind of followed me into 2024. There were times that work was stressful, or life was stressful, or things would happen around the house. And I was always just alone for it, And when he was here, he was very, very tired and very, very distracted from being gone so much and working such long hours. And over time, I kind of let my mental diet kind of go to absolute crap. I let my thoughts start wandering. There was so much that we shared in common. Like, he really was my best friend, really was my best friend. But there was a lot that we didn't share in common. And I started thinking about those things. I started focusing on those things. What you focus on persists. I started focusing on those things. I started focusing on, well, what would it be like to have a partner that actually wants to like go camping with me or gets excited about taking me on a hike, not just, well, she likes hiking, so let me go to, not that that's what he was doing, but like someone that's like, ooh, there's this really cool spot I want to take you. We're going to love it. Or wants to go like camp in the woods with me for a whole weekend with no technology and just each other. Or someone who looked at the stars and the moon and the sunset with the same wonder that I always have. I thought, what would it be like to be with that kind of person? And I caught myself thinking those thoughts. And every time I was like, ooh, Mary, like, if you think about this enough, if you focus on this enough, this is what you're going to get. That. I would catch what I know. Like, I got a whole channel about this. I know better than to start fantasizing about a life without my husband. And yet I kept letting myself do that. And these thoughts, they almost started as a whisper that turned into a roar over time of just this, I don't want to say dissatisfaction because I wasn't dissatisfied. It was just this, I guess, longing for a little bit more than what I had. And some of y'all are probably like sitting there watching this going, oh my God, what a freaking idiot. I saw y'all together. I saw how much you love each other. I saw this, that, And I think love is a huge part. I think playfulness and friendship is a huge part of happily ever after. I also think compatibility is. Yep. I also think compatibility is a big part.
Okay, so she's talking now about how she noticed that she started to put her focus on her awareness on the fact that they didn't have a lot in common, right? And of course, you can manifest that you have a lot of things in common, but I also think that it's totally fine and healthy to not have everything in common with someone. Her husband or ex-husband getting a divorce, separated from, works in the military, which she also used to do. So he's away a lot and things like that. So she wanted to experience more or have him appreciate, I suppose, the same things that she did more. So what I want to suggest there is, you don't have to, she does say towards the end of the video from memory that she didn't want to feel like he was like a puppet and she was like trying to control this like puppet version of him or whatever. Or like be the puppet master, I think is what she said. She didn't want to feel like a puppet master in their relationship, which is totally understandable, but it doesn't have to be that way. What you can do in those moments is kind of go a bit more general, right? We share a lot of things in common because what that's going to do is help you notice more the things that you do have in common. Or I love that we appreciate a lot of the same things. So in the Cheat Code Academy this month, we did a challenge, which was the new the new Isn't It Wonderful challenge, kind of based off Neville Goddard's Isn't It Wonderful. But I reword mine. Why am I struggling to talk right now? But I reword mine to be more like, I love that this is this way, or I love how this is this way, or I love being dot dot dot, right? That's just how I prefer to say it. You can do the same thing in your own verbiage, like isn't it awesome that, or whatever feels best for you to say, whatever sort of releases resistance for you, makes you feel more neutral to it. Because the more you try to control things, the more resistance you start to feel. So when you go more general, it can just feel like that resistance dissipates. And again, you're not controlling anyone. It's not about being a puppet master. It is about moving into a reality where you're experiencing more of the things that you want. So when you generally say, like, I love that we have a lot of things in common. I love that we enjoy doing a lot of things together. It doesn't need to be everything. You are going to start to notice more of the things that you enjoy doing together that like could have always existed. You just weren't noticing them, right? Reticular activating system, zoning in on the things that you believe really, or that you're thinking the most about, putting your awareness the most on. You're going to start to notice more of the things that you share in common with someone and stop focusing as much on, like naturally stop focusing as much on the things that you don't have in common or don't do together or that they disagree with you on. It's okay to disagree with people as well. I'm not saying that to Mary, I'm saying it to you all in general. Like a lot of people are very triggered by being around people who don't agree with everything they say or whatever. And if that's the case, your nervous system's very out of whack. You should be able to have conversations with people that don't necessarily agree with everything that you say and not be triggered by that or worry that being exposed to another opinion is going to shake your own belief systems. So, yeah, let's continue.
And I'm a crunchy, hippie, outdoorsy nature girl, and he is a city guy. Like the second we separated, he got an apartment downtown, moved back to the city because that's what he wants. That's what his heart wanted. And I actually want to live in a more rural area than what I already live in. I want to have like 20 acres in the middle of nowhere, and that would be torture for him. And living in a high rise downtown would be torture for me. And there's a lot more to happily ever after than where you choose to live. But I think that over time I started realizing things about us that I hadn't really focused on earlier in the relationship because I just loved him so much, if I'm being honest. I wasn't looking at the compatibility, the long term, the how will we be happiest as we're growing old, and I just looked at how much I loved him. And with him being gone so much in the military, it was easier and easier and easier over time for me to start noticing those things and going, oh crap, what would it be like to just have someone lay next to me in a tent? Because some tents have like the sunroofs, and just look at the stars, like, oh my God, that'd be incredible, without going like, oh, this is so boring. I started thinking about that a lot.
Okay, so here she's been talking about how her husband is more of an inner city guy. She's more of a rural girl. She wants to live even further out in the country in the sticks than she already does, right? And that she started to essentially feel bad about the fact that he was living out regionally with her, rurally with her, and not where he wanted to. And so another thing that I wanted to suggest there is, because I always go back to what she said towards the end of the video when I first watched it, a month ago or whenever I saw it. She said she didn't want to feel like the puppet master and that she knew that she could affirm that he loves living rurally. But again, like I said earlier, that's putting a lot of pressure on a very specific thing that's trying to control something. And that's why it feels resistant and that's why it feels exhausting and why could be a big part of the reason why she got to the point where she was like, I just don't want to like be working on this all the time. And that's partially why it feels easier to just separate, right? So instead of, and again, I'm not saying she did anything wrong and it's totally always her choice. If she's happier doing this, that's fine. There's no wrong way. I'm just using this as an example to put to you in case you're finding that you're still trying to, like, you maybe have manifested in your specific person romantically, right? But you're still feeling like you are constantly having to affirm to change things about them instead of changing things about yourself, which could be for you. Again, I'm not sure that there's anything Mary has said that where I would direct this to her, but I'm just saying what I'm inspired to say in this moment. It could be that like little things, like I always use the socks in the hamper, right? They leave their socks on the floor next to the hamper and you ask them to put their socks in the hamper. And a lot of you, because you're not changing what's within here and here, you're looking through a lens of your own insecurity and seeing something like a sock on the floor as being they don't love you. assigning that meaning to something like that. Whereas when you do the internal work, those things don't bother you as much or at all. You know what I mean? But going back to what she said about them wanting to live in different places or preferring to live in different places, instead of putting the focus and pressure on him wanting to live where she wants to live, she could have zoomed out a bit and gone more general and sort of said, I love that and see, I'm using the challenge here. What you could say, we're on the same page with where we want to live. And then you could just let that play out however it plays out. It could be that maybe there was a compromise that they were both happy with. But because she's got in her mind, well, I actually want to live way further out. He wants to live on the opposite end of that spectrum and be very close to the city or in the city. He's never going to be happy where I am. But when you can reframe it to we're on the same page with where we want to live, or using the challenge that we did within the Cheat Code Academy this month, I love that we're on the same page with where we want to live. I love that we're both happy where we live together, and letting that play out via the most efficient route, the path of least resistance, right? To lead you to be in potentially a different place than where you're currently staying, where she's currently staying in the sticks, where he was staying with her reluctantly because that's the story she had about him. It takes a lot of the pressure off. If you can, I hope you can see where I'm going, like what I'm trying to say, or how that could take the pressure off when you just focus on that you are in a place together that you both love, that you're both happy with, then you don't have to stress about where that is, because you know that even if you think in this moment that you want to live more regionally, more rurally, more in the country, and they want to live in the city, wherever you end up being together, you're going to be happy living. So that none of those, like the city and the country, doesn't really matter. And going back to what I said about the compatibility and the shared interests and everything, like another thing that you can say is, I love that we have the perfect balance of shared interests and individual interests, because that's, also healthy to have your own thing. It's very healthy, in fact. Always word these things in a way that feels more natural to you, though. That's, my way of speaking. It may not be yours.
And I was driving in my car and I had the music off and I was just really focused on my thoughts. And I said out loud to God, the universe, whatever, if this is not the man that I'm supposed to be with, please remove him from my life. And I said it. I put it out there. And a week later, he sat me down and told me about the doubts that he was having about things. And now, mind you, even though I've been thinking about it for a long time, when he said it, I was like, oh my God. Because it's a shock, you know? I mean, like, gosh, central nervous system, you've got almost 7 years where this person is a constant. And then you go, this is not a boyfriend-girlfriend breakup. If we're doing this, it's a bell that can't be unrung. This is a choice that we will not undo, because this is divorce, right? Sure, you can take the papers back or just, whatever. But in my mind, a third and final separation, a third and final split with me as your wife and you as my husband, this isn't something we're going to turn back from.
Like, it seems like Mary's very at peace with her decision and how things have gone, and that's great. What I would say is not even necessarily to her, because the situation is what it is and she's at peace with that, but to you, just to remind you that there's nothing outside of you deciding whether or not you can have what you want, whether or not you're ready to have what you want, right? You are made up of the same energy that everything else is made up of. And that energy is God, is the universe. And because you are made up of that same energy, that's why you're able to influence it. That's why you're able to choose the reality that you step into. So I just, as a coach teaching from the way that I teach, that putting that out there is coming from a fear-based place of like, I'm worried that this isn't my perfect person. And when you do that, the answer that you get back is going to be confirmation that they're not them. So this is where, like, putting the power outside of you and looking to a universe or a God or, something outside of you that you feel like is it like a higher power outside of you that can make these decisions or whatever. That is where it can kind of steer you wrong, because if you're asking like, is this right for me? Then that is projecting out more of the doubt than the decision of what you get to have. I hope that makes sense. And then what that does is just usually confirms for you the opposite of what you may actually want. In Mary's instance, because of the things that I've already mentioned in the video, it seems like she's gotten to a point where it was probably a relief to not feel like she had to control things anymore for herself to be happy. That is why like true manifestation is more about flow and not force.
Also, because I know some of the comments might say this, and I'll dive into this more in a future video. If y'all are interested, I'm happy to. When I started having the thoughts of like going camping and he wouldn't like that, or going hiking and he's not into that, or looking at the stars and he'd rather look at Netflix, as I'm thinking about all that, some of y'all are probably going, well, you could just revise it. You could just affirm that he loves going camping with you, Sure. But I also don't want to have to play puppet master with my husband for the rest of my life. And some people do. That's how some people choose to manifest, and it works very well for them, and they're very happy, and so are the people that are in their lives. It's not for me. Manifestation and how you choose to manifest and what you choose to manifest is a very personal choice. And I'm a big fan, as y'all know, of like, let me address my limiting beliefs, let me set my intention, let me clear away my own baggage so the thing that I'm manifesting can actually come to me. But if I have to sit there and like puppet master, well, now you like camping, you know, I didn't want to do that, so that was a personal choice of mine. At a certain point, I did intentionally decide to take my hands off the wheel and just let this happen. And it did. And so in November, we had all these conversations and, started slowly, what is it? Like conscious, what do they call it? We decided to consciously, what do the celebrities say? A conscious uncoupling. We started this process of conscious uncoupling in November, and then first week of December, he was gone. He moved out.
Yeah, see, so where she said the puppet master thing, and it kind of seems like she felt kind of guilty for that. She felt like she was keeping him from a life that made him happy, which of course, like everything is what you decide that it is, right? So if you think that that is the case, that is what you'll experience. And you'll start to notice maybe little things in their body language or the way they see things because you're looking through that lens of they're not happy doing the things that I would prefer for them to be doing, then that guilt can come up. But if you, again, are able to go more general and just focus on affirming or visualizing or scripting or deciding, which is really as simple as it needs to be, just deciding you don't need to do these things. They're just tools in your tool belt to help move you into a place where you feel more neutral about it, right? Doing those things in a way that is more general and is just saying, I love that we're on the same page with this particular thing. I love that we have enough things in common that we're both happy, but we also have enough things that are our own things that we're also happy. I worded it better earlier in the video, but just to give you an idea. In terms of the camping, specifically, that's something that obviously means a lot to her. If they were doing enough things that they both enjoyed together that maybe didn't end up necessarily being the camping, although it could be under that general kind of umbrella way of affirming or visualizing or scripting, there may have been enough things that they did and enjoyed together that him not wanting to go camping didn't bother her as much because they had a perfect balance of the things that they enjoyed doing together and enjoyed doing individually.
And I am okay. I'm actually better than okay. I'm good. What does this mean for me? Well, it means I'm leaving San Diego. I've wanted to for a long time, and I couldn't because he was in the military and stationed here. And now that we are no longer together, it means I can leave. I'm not from here. I'm from the South, and I am going to move in the not so distant future. It is a city that I love. If you live in this city and you've gotten coaching with me, chances are I was like, oh my God, I love your city. I would still live there if I could. But, he would never want to go there. Well, he's not in the picture, so I get to move there.
She also says that she wanted to move further out, right? Like I mentioned earlier in the video, and she wanted to move to San Diego from wherever it is she is now. So I assume that it's like further out. And because that was something that she wanted for herself, what she decided she was going to do eventually, right? It's happened via the most efficient route based on all of her other belief systems, which is why living from the end of her relationship, as well as being in San Diego could have completely happened in a harmonious way where they were able to stay together. But I think that she was putting so much pressure on the idea of controlling him to want to live in San Diego and just seeing like that would just be so much work to have to do. Whereas if she just kind of, again, went general, it would have solved so many things. This is why manifesting steps can be, not the best way to go about things. Like, can you manifest that way? Yes, but you're trying to use logic to influence something that is not logical, that doesn't happen logically. And it's like putting like an end destination into Uber, and instead of just trusting Uber to take you there, you're like, where do I think would be the most efficient way to go? And like, Uber might take like a little detour because there's traffic and you decide to go to the traffic, you meet the traffic, and then you end up having to take a laneway, and that laneway goes out in a direction that's not even in the way of where you wanted to go. And then you have to go all the way around, and then you find out that there's a one-way street. So you have to actually back out of that street and go. See what I'm saying? That is what manifesting in steps is like. It ends up taking you via a very convoluted route 99.999% of the time. So if you live from the end of like the relationship that you want and the friendships that you want and the place that you want to live, and go general with the way that you think about it. You could even go as general as, I love that I'm happy with everything in my life and my relationship with such and such. Everything includes where you would live with that person. Do you know what I mean? That's probably not, like, I probably could have come up with something better than that, but my battery on my laptop's running out. So the other thing that's just come to me is like she's seen him as a boundary, a block to, she's seen him as a block to living where she really wanted to live. And that has created that to be a condition that she could never have really lived where she wanted to live as long as she was with him, because he would never have wanted to live there, or because he wasn't stationed, because he was in the army. They were living near where he was stationed, I believe. So removing those conditions, which happens naturally in a lot of, like, oftentimes when you're able to go more general with your affirmations. And there could have been somewhere that, going back to the general affirmation about her loving that they are on the same page with where they live and that they're happy where they live together and all that sort of thing. She could have ended up somewhere that had the same vibe and everything that she wanted from San Diego, or that what she thinks San Diego would be like, and being completely happy in the relationship, in the place, or in a place that she would be happy across both fronts, that also maybe lined up with his work, or maybe his work would have changed. The how and the when is nobody's business, right? You're just focusing on being really happy where you are with who you're with, and allowing that to happen how it happens, living from the end. Okay, so towards the end, she just kind of goes into the direction of the channel and things like that. But there were a few other things that I had seen in her videos over time when I used to kind of watch her channel that have popped into my head. So I wanted to address those things. Mary is in her late 30s, I believe, and she wants to be a mum still, which is totally fine and totally possible. I have a video on that called, I think the thumbnail says it's not too late. So you should be able to find that in the manifestation playlist on my channel. But I do also wonder if she put so much pressure on this relationship with this particular person when they first connected, because it was the first time she had felt those feelings for someone in a long time. And the pressure of the, like, fear mongering that women get about their biological clocks was like in her mind. And she was like, it kind of needs to work with this person because I'm running out of time in that sense. I do wonder if that's a factor. Again, I'm only saying this because she has talked about this in her videos in the past about wanting to be a mum and how she's manifesting being a mum regardless of her age. And again, I think it is totally possible. But just in case that resonates with anyone, like, are you finding that you're putting so much pressure on this person? Not that you can't manifest them, okay? I'm not saying give up on them and just blah, 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 but I'm saying it might release some of the pressure that is keeping them at bay. If some of you out there are going, like, I've met this person, as the first person I've had these feelings for in a long time or ever, and I'm getting along in age, I'm running out of time for these other things that I would like to experience in a relationship, like starting a family, for example, and that's creating a lot of resistance and pressure on the situation. So if that is the case, definitely go and watch that video where I talk about It's Not Too Late, and I do talk a bit more about in detail, like, from a woman's perspective, like the pressure that gets put on women when we get told biological clocks and things like that. When there are women who have had children into their 40s naturally, easily, etc. I go into, like, the idea of IVF and things like that in that video that I'm referring you to as well. So I'll put it on the end card. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. I do appreciate that she sort of manifested the end of their marriage to be amicable and, as peaceful and everything as possible. But it is sad to hear, because a lot of her content was around manifesting her SP back and when she got him back and their wedding and all of that thing, sort of thing, and the direction she wanted to take their relationship in terms of becoming a mum. And I completely think she can absolutely become a mum with someone else into her 40s. Those were the things that came to me when I first saw the video, where I was like, oh, if I had someone like that going through those situations as a client, how I would kind of help them reframe things that could have gone in a different direction, because she still very much loves this man. She's just very at peace with the direction things have gone in. And again, there's no wrong. Everything is always your choice. I just thought that that would be helpful to at least one of you out there. I'd love to know if you do find it helpful. Let me know in the comments. And if there's any other videos that you would like for me to do something like this on, so reacting to someone else's story or TikToks, I could do a TikTok reaction video. Let me know in the comments below. So, yeah, this again, just to reiterate, none of this was to shame Mary. She seems, again, very at peace. It sounds like she's got a lot of exciting things in her future that she's planning for herself. I wish her all the best. This was mainly just to use the content that someone else has put out themselves on a public platform to kind of coach on to help others in case any of this resonates with your situation or that you feel you're able to apply to a different situation.